Good morning. It is truly an honor to be here. Jeff, thank you, my friend. Thank you for allowing us to be in this wonderful space. Thank you for being the leader that you are. And thank you really for the team that you have assembled and that you lead. They are wonderful. They're all around us. And so thank you to them as well. Thank you to my team, Carol Waddy, and to Angela Liu for also coordinating this. And thank you all for bringing this to life. You're right, Jeff. It was 2 years ago that we started to talk about this concept. And it's amazing. We've had a little bit of a pandemic in between. And now we're doing it virtually. And I hope that the next time we do it, we actually will be in person. But it's amazing to be in this space because this space really embodies so much of the work that Chick-fil-A is involved in, and also so much of the effort that we think about when we think about impact and we think about acceleration. Because this space is on the west side of Atlanta. And for those of you all who may not know, the west side of Atlanta is a part of Atlanta that historically had been ignored, neglected. It was a part of Atlanta that had great culture, great bones, great people. And now all of that is starting to come to life, to be accelerated. And you can feel the impact. You can feel the change. And this building, this effort here in this building is a part of that. And so as Jeff said, my name is Rodney Bullard. I work with the Chick-fil-A Foundation and work with Chick-fil-A Corporate Social Responsibility. I brought you a little bit Greek yogurt parfait from Chick-fil-A, and I hope that you all are eating Chick-fil-A wherever you all are individually, either for breakfast or for lunch or for dinner. We can take care of you either way. But it's an honor to be with you all today. When I think about impact, I think that accelerators often have been reserved for for-profit endeavors. You hear of accelerators for I'm starting a business or this startup or I'm incubating something and we have this incubator. But at the end of the day, nonprofit organizations need incubation and acceleration just as much. And at the end of the day, leadership is not reserved just for a for-profit endeavor, but it is also reserved for doing good. It's also reserved for solving problems. It's also reserved for those who want to give voice to the community. And so the question is, how as leaders can we make an impact? Our hope for impact. How can we make an impact? Because the community is asking us, how will we as leaders show up in the community? And that obligation, that tension, that expectation is real because the problems of the community are real. All you have to do is look around and you see the problems in the pandemic. You see that people are without homes. You see that people are without jobs. You see that people in many cases are without hope for tomorrow. And so if you will allow me, I'd like to talk about 3 things that might inform how we can make an impact. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the power of voice. The power of voice. You know, we think about our voice, and oftentimes we neglect it. But the Bible says that the tongue is the most powerful member of the body. In fact, the Bible says in Proverbs 31:9 that we are to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. And I love Proverbs 31 because oftentimes we hear Proverbs 31 as to how to find a good woman, how to find a good wife, but really there's this full explanation of how to be a good leader. King Lemuel was being exhorted to by his mother, and she was saying, son, I want you to be a good leader. And one of the things that you have to do to be a good leader is to speak up, use your voice for those who can't speak for themselves. I'm reminded of a quote from William Faulkner, where he says, never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. I'm also reminded of the impact of failing to use your voice, failing to speak up. There's a great poem by a gentleman by the name of Martin Niemöller. He was a Lutheran preacher, a Lutheran pastor during World War II, a German Lutheran pastor. And at first, he was a sympathetic advisor of Adolf Hitler. But afterwards, he came to understand that that was an incorrect and evil position. And he wrote this poem. He said, "First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Our voice is powerful. Our voice is our first gift, our first effort. Whether that voice is in written form, whether that voice is in oral form, whether that voice is sometimes just showing up and having your presence felt. Voice lends itself to influence. The second thing that I want you to talk about, in addition to the power of your voice, is the power of unity, the power of coming together, the power of collaboration, weaponizing collaboration and convention so that you can have greater impact. When I think about the power of unity, it takes me back to a trip that I took to Israel some years ago. I went to Israel, and it was on one of these buses, and we had various tour groups, and it was with 100 of my new closest friends that I did not know previously. But my wife and I went on this trip, and I was amazed. I was amazed at everything that I saw in Israel. I was amazed at how the Bible came to life. I was amazed at the places that I saw and how small and intimate they were. But even more so, I was amazed at something as simple as the walls of the cities, the walls of Jerusalem, the walls of the small cities and the big cities. And I was amazed because they had stood the test of time. Literally, they were thousands of years old. And when I really took the time to observe the walls and look at them closely, they were rocks, individual rocks. And they were pressed together. And they were all sorts and all manner of rocks. And they had held together for centuries. And as I looked closer, these rocks, some were small, and some were big, some were dark, and some were light. They all were individual rocks, none of them the same rock. Each one had its own character, its own constitution. But together, when they formed together, they created a mighty wall. They created a wall that stood the test of time. Oftentimes as leaders, we think that we are alone. Oftentimes as leaders, we think we have to invent something new, that we have to create something on our own. And we find ourselves in what Jeff was talking about, that refrigerator moment, where you just go back and you have to be by yourself. But this is also to remind you that we go further together, and that you have the opportunity every day to choose collaboration over competition. And the power of unity, in addition to the power of voice, is ours. I want to leave you with the third power. The third power is the power of the only. Jeff said that I wrote a book. It was called Heroes Wanted. And Heroes Wanted is based off of this very simple sentiment, that we all have the opportunity to be a hero, but we also all fall into the trap of waiting for a hero. It's a great book called Waiting for Superman, and it really is, we're waiting for somebody to come in and swoop and save us. We all grew up watching cartoons. We all still see the superhero or the super cop or the super billionaire or the super smart person. We all still are waiting for someone, some singular person, to come change our reality, come change from bad to good. But I have something to tell you. That person's not coming. That's a fictitious character. In reality, we don't have that. In reality, we have the power of the only. In reality, we have this statement where we often decry, if only. If only I were smarter, if only I were bigger, if only I were smaller, if only I were whatever. If only I had more money, if only. But I encourage you to turn that on its head. Turn this only and say, only I. Only I can do this one thing. Only I can lend voice. Only I can lend collaboration. Only I can lend my network. Only I can lend my time. Only I can lend this thought. Only I can do this. And what is that only I that you can do? We don't have to boil the ocean. The question is, what's your only I? As I think about it, I think about a story. A friend of mine, Dr. Gregory Ellison, is a professor at the Emory School, Candler School of Theology. And he tells a very poignant story about his Aunt Dot. He says that when he was 6 years old, he was a precocious six-year-old. He would ask questions all the time. He would quiz his Aunt Dot in particular because she had a PhD, she was erudite, and she was smart, and she always had a good answer. And so he quizzed her one day and said, Aunt Dot, I want to ask you a question. I see all of this strife in the world. I see people who are divided along political lines. I see people who are divided along racial lines. I see people being attacked literally in their places of business because of the color of their skin. I see all sorts of issues in our society. I see pandemic. I see affordable housing being an issue. And I want to ask you a question, Aunt Dot, based off of all that I see through the eyes of my 6-year-old self. He said, I want to ask you, Aunt Dot, how do you change the world? How do you change the world? And Aunt Dot reared back because it was a big question. Particularly a big question coming from the mouth of a 6-year-old. And then she leaned in and she said, Greg, I don't know how you change the world, but I do know this. I know you can impact the 3 feet around you. I know that you can see someone who needs your encouragement. I know you can see someone who is in need of your assistance. I know you can use your leadership in the space right in your immediate view. I know you can impact the 3 feet around you. I think about that in juxtaposition of the power of the only. Where are you physically? And what only can you do? Use your powers for good. These don't require money. They don't require fame. They just require you showing up in an intentional fashion. The power of your voice, the power of unity, and the power that only you can provide within your 3 feet, within your space. I encourage you to go out and impact the world. Accelerate good wherever you are. I encourage you to be what God has given you and to be great in your space, to be a leader in your space. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you have done, and even more so, thank you for all that you will do.
Rodney, stay up here with me.
Thank you, man.
I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question. Is that all right?
That's perfect, man.
I love it. Thank you for that. I've been with Dr. Ellison before when he brings out his tape measure and makes you stand within 3 feet and the people around you. I want to do a follow-up question specifically on the collaboration piece.
Yep.
When I talk to nonprofit leaders, there's a challenge in that, right? It's like, because they sometimes see each other as competition.
They do.
Or when they collaborate with someone, they might think of them as a liability.
Yes.
What would you say to someone that their thoughts are like, yeah, that sounds good, that sounds great, Rodney, like that's idealistic, that's hopeful. How would you respond to those people? Because most of them at some point maybe has been burned, right?
Absolutely. You know what I found when I came into the nonprofit space, particularly having a foot still in the for-profit space, that nonprofit was actually more competitive than for-profit. Then the for-profit space, we will cheer each other on. I will have on Sunday Popeyes.
Right.
On Sunday, though.
Only on Sundays.
On Sunday. But the for-profit space, there is this clamor because there is a feeling that there are finite resources and that there's a finite amount of money, and that someone, even worse, may steal my idea and go get money. But truly, if the goal is impact, then we can create collaborations. We can create unity that then is presented to the funders, is presented to the public, is presented to the community, that will get even more funding, that will get even more opportunity. I think that one of the things we also have to check is our ego. This isn't about recognition. This isn't about, hey, we're gonna put you on this billboard and we're gonna showcase what you've done. This is about impact. And they're two separate things. And so if in fact we check our egos, if in fact we understand that good ideas will always be funded, and that good ideas in collaboration with one another will be funded even more, then we will be able to more easily come into unity.
I feel like I wish I had that on record, like in a memo in my voicemail or something. Like Rodney called me, he's like, hey, remember, Jeff, good ideas will be funded.
Yes.
Collaboration is something, as a foundation, as a group of people that support these projects, we want to see that, right?
Yes.
And these things are going to happen irregardless. Like, don't look at it as competition.
That's right.
This is a bigger story that you're trying to be a part of. We don't hear that enough. We have a voice inside our head that says competition.
Yes.
What if I don't get what I need, et cetera, right?
Yeah, we do.
Thanks for sharing this. What an incredible first message for us today.
Thank you, my friend. Again, thank you for having us in this wonderful space.
Thanks.
I hope that people can come visit and see what you're doing here and see how you're doing it, and see, quite frankly, collaboration, because that's part of the mission of this space, in action.
Thank you.
So
thank you, Rodney, for joining us today.
Thank you, my friend.
I'm sure we'll hear a little more from you later, so it will be good.